We are Suzanne Buffam
and Srikanth Reddy, reporting from our couch in the south side of Chicago in the Hyde Park neighborhood.
And today we are going to be reading a poem that we found in the fall 2018 issue of the Paris Review by the French writer Max Jacob, who was, an early 20th century mystical Jewish Catholic proto-surrealist poet and novelist who was roommates early on with Picasso and friends with that whole circle of artists, including people like Modigliani and Apollinaire and Braque and Juan Gris, while also being slightly marginalized or marginal to that culture by consequence of his Jewishness at that historical moment, as well as his homosexuality. And I think also, too, coming from a kind of very small provincial part of France, coming as a bit of an outsider to Paris, which you'll see pertains to the poem called Revignon Street or Revignon Street.
It's translated by Elizabeth Bishop as a young poet who just graduated from Vassar and was spending the summer of 1935 or something like that in a small fishing town in France. Bishop never published the poem in her lifetime, and in fact, we might not have the poem except for our friend and colleague and biographer of Max Jacob, Rosanna Warren, who found the poem in Elizabeth Bishop's archives at Vassar College. Here's our puppy Roxy. So it seems like kind of a great example of how poems can be translated, transmitted, forgotten, and then found by poets. And we're really happy to share it with you today.
So, without further ado, Revignon Street by Max Jacob, translated by Elizabeth Bishop. One never bathes twice in the same stream, the philosopher Heraclitus used to say. However, the same people always turn up again. They go by at the same time, gay or sad. You passers-by in Revignon Street, I have given you the names of historical defuncts. Here's Agamemnon. Here's Madame Hanska. Ulysses is a milkman. Patroclus is at the foot of the street, while a pharaoh is near me. Castor and Pollux are the ladies on the 6th floor. But you, old rag picker, you who, in the enchanted morning, come to get the garbage which is still fresh when I put out my nice big lamp, you whom I do not know, poor and mysterious rag picker, you, rag picker, I have named you a noble and celebrated name. I have named you Dostoevsky.
It's a great poem, and one reason I think we picked it and then we were drawn to it is the whimsy of it and the intimacy of its forms of address, and I think kind of slight campiness of naming the ladies on the 6th floor Castor and Pollux. It kind of brought a little brightness to our lockdown lives.
Yeah, and then, as well as the whimsy and levity of it, there's also, of course, a real seriousness and a gravity of the honoring of the nobility and building of a community in a kind of New York school-like way of naming names and leveling the field between milkmen and Agamemnon. Probably our favorite one, and obviously Jacob's favorite of these figures, to whom he dedicates that beautiful unfolding penultimate sentence, the rag picker, in whom he sees not a heroic figure of war or myth, but a writer, a novelist. And with that figure of the kind of dustbin of history, rag picker figure, who's the most socially marginalized and the lowest on the ladder, he sees the novelist of the socially marginalized, the idiots and the criminals and the underground men, Dostoevsky. So it's sort of a beautiful literary nod and honoring to close the poem.
Yeah, and I think Jacob was like characters in Dostoevsky's novels, someone who was a victim of history and who died awaiting transport to Auschwitz toward the end of the war. So it's a poem that has a lot of the pressure of the real behind it. At a time when I think we're all feeling it. I think we're putting Roxy asleep with a lecture about it. But I want to share it with you.
One last thing about the sheltering in place as a poem that when you're sitting inside your house looking out at the same scene over and over again, the way that literature can help us see it afresh.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.